Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast, where personal growth simply isn't enough. I'm your host, Mark Cordone, a positive psychology coach, a do-gooder from the island of misfit toys who founded the Joy Revolution. Each week I'll wrap with an extraordinary guest doing extraordinary things through their own revolutionary work to talk about the ups, downs, and all-arounds of life. It's my mission to provoke and empower you through increased joy and inspire you to spark your own revolution to change history for the better. Welcome to the most serious happiness podcast in this multiverse. Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast.
We're still talking about the idea of mind over matter, I would say. And so that's something that I was really trying to stay in. I wanted to, we're talking about living in our joy. Then you got to kind of think that, believe that, and it's kind of like the fake it till you make it mentality. Like you have to envision and kind of see yourself doing the things that you would want of yourself when you think that, oh, this is what I would want to see of myself. And exactly what I saw of myself was, I'd like to get off and relax after a long day of work or whatever we're doing in the world, to jump on a national call with amazing innovators and pioneers in their fields to do Joy Revolution, that Mark, I'm sure has told everybody about, and be sitting there relaxing. Some of the other guests had wine in their hand. Mm-hmm. I had one drink in my hand, and you're kicking back, but you're sitting there sharing knowledge, and I was vibrating so highly, and unfortunately, and it wasn't like I was just doing that every day, but I did want to enjoy myself while also being healthy. I still also ate extremely healthy. I was and unfortunately, when we come back to talking about a lot of the things that we endure with our body.
You see what he's doing here?
Yeah.
James? He's escaping that question that I just asked.
I'm trying to tie it all together. No, I'm trying to tie it right back unfortunately, every time that I've gotten sick has only furthered my advancement. I've only sought to learn more, do more, be more active, be more action oriented towards what my soul wanted me to do. So it's like every time that I stray from the path, my body will get sick again, because then I'll immediately be like, okay, you have to remember what is your actual intent. In your intent, let's say if it is to become enlightened, then that means, what does that mean by awakened action? What are the things that you're going to do? And people like Mark, continue to cycle in and out of my path, as the closer that we stay on our path. And what I had mentioned earlier, when they said that you had signed up for this, it makes sense, because I wasn't interested in a slow awakening where I would find out the meaning of life and my purpose when I was 70 or on my deathbed, or after I had already spent all of my life, unfortunately, clocking in and out for something that I didn't understand. For me to have already known that I intently began it in my mid-20s, because I didn't have a family that to feed, and I could seriously focus on myself, was extremely transformative, but I wanted it really quickly. And because I wanted it so quickly, unfortunately, it's the same as somebody who wants to hold onto that electric energy charge with the intent of being able to handle it. Your body will, I was like, fine, then you have this many deaths to go through before you can actually handle in the next level of, let's say, the next level of frequencies, which those who become more compassionate will understand that, because you begin to gain more sensitivities to other things, like just sensory perception, but also you become more sensitive to to others as well. We can feel their fields, you can feel their thoughts, but at the same time, you also begin to feel for them and want to do things that will not only help awaken them, but do things that will help heal them of their traumas. And that's a lot of the path that has forced me, especially when I mentioned earlier, it's called the wounded healer. All of these things all the sufferings that I've had to go through only push me right back to that point. And I would say that that's a segue to how I've begun to use not only my trainings in meditation, in behavior, in public health, in as a creative, as an arts advocate, as someone working in nonprofit, but as a shaman, as a martial artist, towards envisioning how could all these things tie together to really make a difference and give back.
Yeah. Well, number one is that we could go a million different ways with this, where you're taking this right now. And I'm glad that you talked about the wounded healer again. When it comes to this idea of being a wounded healer, I can definitely feel someone taking the path of loneliness versus one of solitude, right? There's this long journey between the two. Do you see all humans having the capacity to go through that journey? Because you were talking about potentiality at the beginning of this interview.
Absolutely.
Do we all have infinite potentiality, or do we come in with a finite amount of potentiality for each person?
Well, I do think it's very limited to the constraints of the frequency we're currently in. So like when people talk about us being in 3 dimension, it's 4D with time. We're in 3 and 4D.
So what's this 5D that everyone is talking about?
The whole idea is that we're limited through the 3 through a 3-dimensional physical body that also runs alongside with another dimensionality added of time. But if you're to go outside,
so that's 4.
And yeah, so it's with the way to describe it from spiritual side, it doesn't work linearly like that. Once you're outside of the limitations of 3 and 4D, it's not 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're immediately accessing higher levels and it's not sequential in that aspect is the way that they describe it. It's not like that. But it's obviously for us, we are living within the constraints of that existence. And I do think the only way the way that I would preface this for people is when the astronauts leave Earth, as an actual physical ascension of their bodies, when they leave Earth, all the astronauts come back with a very similar experience, similar to probably what it means to have survived death. They link it very similarly in the profound change in their life beliefs and everything. They call it an overview effect. They say that when they leave the planet, they're able to understand that Earth is a living being in and of itself, and that all the things that we were going through while within the constraints, let's say, of the atmosphere or of the energy, are left behind. And then when could you imagine like the smallness of the stress that you have or the trauma that you endured when you're able to see how little you really are and how little those things really mean to you in the grand scheme of things?
I can't, but also at the same time, I could see this idea of things that are absolutely subjective to me right now that I can't make objective unless I actually leave a vessel.
Right.
Or I actually leave the planet that is rotating.
That's where meditation comes in. So meditation, a lot of prayer, people with near-death experiences, they all talk about how the fact that they were able to detach themselves from their physical form, but and you don't have to die, but people talk about seeing themselves on a table and listening to things and wandering and receiving and hearing beautiful sounds and frequencies and receiving messages from the other side. And when they come back with messages. And a lot of the messages are things like, you are perfect, you are forgiven, you are loved, you are blessed, you are accepted. Now go ahead and do the things that you were supposed to do. Share that there's love, share that there's joy on the other side, and all the things that you're stressing are killing you.
The other side of what?
The other side of, just say whatever's next. Let's just say the other side is let's say that's a bad term. Let's say the things that humans cannot sense. because human senses are limited. Let's say, for example, our sight is limited to a very tiny visible spectrum. And because we were raised with a seeing is believing type of thing, we don't think that anything that exists out of what we can't see exists. So we call them ghosts, specters, angels, superstitions, but that's energy, and it's energy of any form. And just because we can't see it with our eyes doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And the other side would be just stepping into the frequencies that we've never tapped into. And that's a lot of how the way people describe ascending, life after death. That's how we are still able to commune with people who have died, or learn from ascended masters, or learn from spirit guides, or be able to hear your friend from across the world because they're thinking about you, because it's still connected by the connect. I mean, let me look at it as this way.
I call it the field.
Right. I mean, the field. Yeah. It's the word. I mean, the words escape because there is no real words. Human words don't really apply. Like the idea of calling God is a human word. And the idea that humans walk around being offended when you take God's name in vain, that's not God's name. That's a human name for a being that we can't actually say its name to begin with, which is why in high level Kabbalah, they call it Yahweh. But if we want to get back to sound, it's Yahweh because that's what it sounded like to a human. But if you have, when we move towards high level music studies, it's an overtone. So most people think that there's one tone when you're singing, but there's things called overtones. And the idea of Yahweh was it is overtones. So imagine if you like hold a tone and say Yahweh, let's say
Yahweh.
Okay, go ahead. Do it again. Yahweh.
This section brought to you by WWF ice cream bars.
But that's why I started this in saying that a lot of the things really will come back to vibration, frequency. And that's frequency of thought, frequency of being. And that's what, when you ask, does everybody have to go through this? No. As we continue to move into higher frequencies, the bodies will also be made in a higher frequency. Unfortunately, we were made during a set frequency. Our body was printed during a set frequency and had that frequency. And for it to change, it must actually have a shift. And it'll manifest as a sickness, and it can manifest as a death. If you weren't strong enough to survive that death, it's a transition nonetheless. You can't, they talk about funerals is a celebration for those left behind, or it's meant to be a mourning for those left behind. I'm sorry, when it should be a celebration for those that are going on to their next chapters. And unfortunately, we're all moving through different levels of ascension in our own adventures. But if you're able to survive your sicknesses, you'll hear that across the board from people who've survived life-threatening sicknesses, and suddenly they've begun to do more philanthropic things, starting foundations to heal and help others. And that's not so that they can make more money. They didn't survive so that they can, glorify themselves. They're now tapped in wanting to heal countless other beings because of that one experience or many experiences.
Okay, so again, a million questions I could go into, and you and I being musicians or just Filipinos who like karaoke, right? I really like the way that you're bringing up the way we think in higher frequency. It's not thinking about one frequency that goes higher. It's almost like thinking in chords or harmonics that are in, instead of thinking about a solo singer, you're thinking about like the Red Hot Chili Peppers playing together, Flea and...
It's more, yes, it's a solo singer, but what happens if you take a choir? That's
Exactly. As you start moving up. And so it's making sense in terms of the game. The game is that we are returning back to the choir.
To the choir. Yes.
And that makes a lot of sense, because one of the things that has, I wouldn't say has driven me bonkers, but is this idea that when you're thinking about friends or soulmates, and then they're thinking about you just on a simple level.
Right.
And they'll text you and say, I heard you.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, I was speaking to you.
Right. Exactly.
And so that kind of idea, you brought a dog, by the way. That kind of idea that that consciousness is
connected,
is brilliant. So
Absolutely.
Having gone through all the things that you've gone through, having lived and died maybe 1,000,000 times during this podcast, at least, like we've had 5 malfunctions already happen in this podcast.
It's a lot of energy. That's why. Sorry.
Right? No, that's
and I don't know if it's just because of those cards, but that's something that happens a lot with when you're bringing in energy and higher frequencies in general. Electronics will begin to fail. So they say that in all the studies of people who do quote unquote ghost hunting,
the EVPs.
Yep. Now, all of their batteries, which have been fully charged and are meant to withstand extreme levels of heat and cold, will become zapped, and they can't explain it, but because it's quantum.
Hey, it's Mark. I hope you're digging the Golden Mike podcast. If you have or are just starting your own revolution fueled by joy, there's a site I created for you. If you, like me, believe that personal growth is simply not enough, if you, like me, are committed to changing history for the better in both micro and macro ways, check out joyrevolution.com. In there, you'll find an archive of our over 200 Golden Mike Live Facebook shows, and of course, our podcast that you're currently listening to. Check out the blogs highlighting how positive psychology and joy theory apply to your everyday life. There's even some cool clips from our Joy Revolution course geared towards influencers, speakers, writers, and change agents. It's all there. Go to joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Let's get back to the episode. Well, James Lumix is still going, so we still have James going on here. Yeah. So before I bring in your huge entourage that you've walked in with bush jumping productions, I want to ask you about sort of the revolution that you lead now. We've talked about this for several days, you coming on the show. There's multiple things going on here, but the focus that I wanted to have of this podcast and the interview today is Kris Valeriano as being, or whatever the fuck you are, man, this guy who's draining my energy from the road. What is your joy revolution? And more importantly, what are the messages that you're getting in from the sides that we can't hear?
Right.
Or sense?
Right. So first and foremost is really stepping into knowing what it means to step into. I mean, everyone says it now as a joke. I'm living my best life. I'm stepping into my best self. Really,
it's becoming a platitude now on Instagram. It is,
but that's amazing. That means it's becoming a mass awakening. And all they talk about what it took is in previous studies, they talk about how. I'll say, for example, and this is a very long way to describe this, but they say they did studies of, let's say, monkeys that were trying, and I'm going to botch the interview. I'm just going to paraphrase it. Monkeys in one island and all around were looking at how to open food or something.
Macaws on the Galapagos.
Right. And so regardless of monkeys that were not connected by geography, the whole idea is that when they were studying the monkeys and let's say how they were going to learn how to do something epiphanic that wasn't already norm for that particular species as a behavior, they noticed that it wouldn't just happen in one location and stay there isolated by geography. If the second that a certain and they call it a critical mass. And the critical mass is, let's say, 10% is typically a number that's known as a critical mass. A critical mass of that population learning something affected the field. And what that means is that other monkeys and other islands started exhibiting the same behavior without ever being physically in contact with those other monkeys, which reaffirms a field aspect that Mark is talking about. And with that, that's why a lot of people are seeking to become, woke. Woke is a trending thing now.
Woke AF.
Yeah, woke AF. And they have good intentions, and it is going to be a little pop sensationalized, but it's undeniable at this point. The fact that that awakening and enlightenment is going to become a household word when it wasn't. It was for the elite before. It was for those stuck in cloisters, in the mountains, living a life that wasn't accessible to us, or one that we couldn't ever see ourselves living. But now normal people in the cities are considering, well, what if I want to awaken versus do this industrial based job that only that I'm being forced to do, when this was just a product of a certain society's belief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely hearing you. That we're moving out of an industrial age. Mm-hmm. Right. And we're going into this age of consciousness. That's just an I statement. Mm-hmm. But also at the same time, like the critical mass, whether you go in Malcolm Gladwell books, or you go and read your first neuroscience study, mm-hmm. or public health, is becoming so wild right now, mm-hmm. That they're making a very clear distinction. And by they, I'm talking about either researchers or pop psychologists, whatever mm-hmm. you want to call this whole cloister mm-hmm. of people, making a distinguishment between learning and knowing. Mm-hmm. And what I'm hearing from you is that there's more people that are going to come into this world knowing because mm-hmm. of the learning that has been done.
Innately, yes. They'll be benefiting. I mean, you have to imagine, let me describe it this way. When you're passing on your seed to a child, that's kind of like that's a literal imprinting of your DNA at that moment, given and matching the DNA of someone else at that moment, and creating a new being. That means that those DNA frequencies of where you were and where your spouse were, or your partner were, is what's helping serve as a starting foundation for our physicality. But if we were to be, let's say we were able to get ourselves to a point where we never get sick, and then compare passing on that DNA to somebody who just constantly gets sick, and the one who's never getting sick, this kind of comes back, through why it seems clear why certain cultures love the idea of breeding only certain cultures with certain cultures, because certain cultures might have had higher DNA things unlocked versus others. But therein lies the beauty of the mixing of the cultures, because you're unlocking more possibilities to happen versus limiting them by only a repeating set of frequencies, which is, we know it to be fractaling.
So let me ask a question that puts this all together. Mm-hmm. Then, if we're moving towards this idea where we're going to reach a tipping point mm-hmm. of consciousness or enlightenment, mm-hmm. and you're talking about, well, the individual journey is mm-hmm. not one in which, when you reach enlightenment, that is necessarily something that is joyful. Mm-hmm. It can be suffering.
Right.
Are you predicting that when this enlightenment comes, there might be a mass suffering of consciousness in the same way that the individual?
I wouldn't predict that, because it's like saying, would the monkeys on the other islands have to do a mass starve and die off because they couldn't figure out how to open the food?
Right on. Yeah.
Because of the critical mass, they're already going to begin to adjust as well.
So people will be coming in understanding more than a 4D
right
world.
And which is why they talk about a lot of the kids who are coming in, they call them indigo children. For example, I've already come in with more gifts than we do, already let's say, turned on. All of our gifts were, let's say, and the reason why I prefaced earlier that, it really depends on what the societies are, how they're raising their children, because that affects how they are exhibiting and tapping into their DNA potentiality. If they don't know that, if you don't know that you can access communicating with an animal by sending conceptual thoughts and images to it, then you will never do it. And that's no judging. You just don't know what you don't know.
Cool, super cool. I want to bring on James and Oscar in a second here, and I want to talk about furthering your joy revolution. But I want you to answer. I want you to fill in the blank for me here. It's a little game show that we like to play here on the Golden Mike podcast, and it's just finish the sentence with whatever you feel called to answer it with. All right. So joy smells like
flowers.
Joy tastes like
sunshine.
Joy sounds like
children's laughter.
Joy looks like
a mother looking at a baby.
Joy feels like
a baby being held by a mother.
Revolution is
not necessary if everybody was already operating in full love.
Kris, you passed the test, my friend. Let's bring in James and Oscar, and as they're coming in, talk to me a little bit about the dynamics of bush jumping. What is bush jumping?
So bush jumping was founded as a multi-genre artist collective, and the idea was when we talk about limitations, a lot of artists like to stay within their own lanes as society places it, when there's so much cross-genre, cross-disciplinary things that can be learned by bringing amazing artists together. And that's how the Renaissance operated. That's how I imagine the classics like Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Those all were written in conjunction with each other because great artists came together, pushed each other, challenged each other, and things that they produced within the span of a lock-in. They walked away producing great things. I was inspired by that and wanted to challenge ourselves to really embody what it means to be the new Renaissance. So as a result, for many years, we've brought together choreographers, writers, directors, actors, singers, songwriters, filmmakers, premier level ballerinas and choreographers, martial artists, and with the idea of creating things that, let's say, other creatives would I only want to bring in a theater actor. Oh, and they're great. But imagine how much you can learn when you're comparing notes from one teacher or from one way of learning to others. And that's something that has really inspired me, and a lot of the things that we're doing within our collective and within our music is under the idea of bush jumping. Bush jumping was founded when I was in college, having one of the best moments of our life, feeling free. And we literally were jumping into bushes because we were elated. We were celebrating life to its fullest without a care in the world because we were there with our best friends, and life was literally so fucking amazing. We would do something as silly as jump into a bush. But why wouldn't you?
And you were probably late to work the next day, and I had to call your ass out for it. Kris is like totally quiet right now.
Time is a construct.
Time is a construct.
I was there when I was meant to be there.
Right on.
No comment.
No comment.
I plead the fifth.
James, David, Tom, I want you to come in here to the mic for a second. Now this cat's been holding the camera the whole time. Come on, get on the mic with me, James. I want to talk to you for a second because like we've formed this brotherhood around professional wrestling, but also at the same time your role in bush jumping. What does that look like? And also at the same time, you've been watching this whole interview. Yeah. Like what's been going through your head in terms of your own revolution and stuff?
I've known Kris forever. We had a company, we were music producers when we, early on in our friendship, and, we the story I always like to tell is like our company name was Move Makers, and we would hand out business cards and people would be like, "Oh, Movie Makers." We'd always have to correct them. It's like, where are you reading Movie Makers on this business card? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But you know, the joke that we always say is from that like that was the transition moment of when the music became film, and that's, you know, part of the birth of, you know, bush jumping.
So why bush jumping for you? Why not just start a movie making company? Well, like, what is so special for you about this?
Well, it's been my friendship with Kris and watching this transformation, watching everything that watching him learn and grow and everything that he has, you know, what he's taken bush jumping to, and always, you know, we were early on in bush jumping, we did a lot of 48-hour film festivals and just always the excitement and it's like jumping into a bush. Like he was like, when he was so giddy, like, and just enjoying life so much, when those first 48-hour film festivals like were taking place, like Tragically Beautiful Capture, Rage Drew was our first one. We didn't make it in on time, but like, you know, just, it was just fun and like free. And it's like, you don't, until you like, this was over 10 years ago. So you look back on it now and you're just like, wow, like at that time of life was so just like enthralling, and whatever adjective that you want to throw in there.
Enthralling is great. I would say joy.
Yeah. Joy. I think I've heard that somewhere tonight.
Yeah, I do have to tell you this. You put a nice hat on you. You look like Bray Wyatt from the WWE. So I have to ask you your prediction for the main event of WrestleMania.
It's gonna be Roman Reigns Fiend.
Roman Reigns Fiend. I have to get the plant in for the new podcast on wrestling. Thank you for shooting this whole thing. Oscar is coming in with a peace symbol. Look at his feet there, feet crossed, pants tight as hell. I see the peen print. Oscar, come on in here.
Guitarist right here.
It's good to finally meet you because I've seen you on a million bush jumping things for the past couple of years. Your beard is to be desired. It's thick. It pales mine pales in comparison to yours. Oscar, why are you a part of this joy revolution of bush jumping?
Well, thanks for the compliments. I mean, it makes up for all this stuff.
Oh man!
So, why am I part of bush jumping?
Yeah, brother.
I don't know.
That's probably
I'm just here.
That's probably the most profound of answers.
No, honestly, Kris and I, we hit it off just straight up. Like we wanted to just work. Like the moment that we got together, we knew that we wanted to create music. So it was just one of those things where it just all clicked together. Okay. When I first met him, I didn't really know that he was a creative. I didn't know that he sang. I didn't know any of this. We just met through a good friend of ours, Joy Tolentino. She's a great artist in her own right.
Another Filipino. Yeah. Shout out.
She, I was working with her, and then one thing led to another. I met Kris.
Have to keep moving forward. And some of the people that I meet towards that peak, like in bush jumping, are people that I'm going to meet at that new altitude to take me to that next level. And sometimes we can't even explain it through words. We have to do it through music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bush jumpers, do you have any more songs on parents, dads, mothers, Sunshine's dog, or the fact that Sunshine's studio is about to close on our asses right now because we said that we'd be out of here by 9:30?
Sorry, Sunshine.
See what happened was.
We're trying to do everything. We're trying to hit all bases, all corners, everything. But yeah, I think that any song that we have our interpretation. We know what it means to us. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot of wordplay involved that people can make them their own.
Oh, look at you making it hard for us.
Yeah,
Dave, Dave, fucking James.
That's it. You're out of recipe. I
want you to come in here for a second, man, because sometimes the videographer gets the shitty end of the stick, and I want to make sure that
no, there's no shitty end of the stick at all.
The both sides of the stick are shitty for everybody here.
Sounds like a bad stick.
Yeah. So you're listening to this. What's going through your head? As I mean, I'm watching you leaning into these shots. I'm watching you really being a part of something that's like living and breathing with this the bush jumping productions. What's going through your head? Because you're the eyes of this operation.
Well, we're all the eyes. You get it. In this moment, I'm the eyes of these. Fumbling on my words. What it really means to me, like everything, like filming, like I've heard this song performed so many times, and like every time I hear it, it hits me on another level. And like when I filmed it today, like I get lost in like a trance almost with this song, and it's just so beautiful, and just like
I could see it. It was like he was slow dancing with the song. It was
yeah, like, and that's because I filmed this song so many times. Watch these guys, like
what he's saying is he's sick of it, guys.
No, I'm not sick of it at all. Yeah, it's amazing to see these guys. Like I've really kind of like gotten back in hanging out with everybody again, and to seeing them perform the last couple of times at Tin Roof and Eddie's Attic, and just seeing like each time like it just raising up a level, and it's unbelievable when you've seen it so many times how it just hits you differently every time and progresses, and it's just you're proud of them. It's like I'm proud of my friends. Like I'm honored and humbled to be around people that push me to like get in a trance where I feel like, I don't know if it's a good film or a bad film. I don't, we'll see at the end, like what it looks like on the screen, but it's, these gentlemen right here give me inspiration and drive, and it's, I'm just humbled and honored to be a part of all this.
Amazing. So I can't wait for this show episode to come out, because all of the shows that we've done have been one sensory aspect. Auditory.
Sure.
And I cannot wait to see what this all comes together to look like. Because of that, and because Sunshine Studio is closing,
yes.
And I can't pay rent anymore here.
It's 9:30. Do you know where your children are?
Yeah, exactly. What is the song that you want to see them perform and that you want to hold the camera for?
Well, I mean, Numb obviously would be the first choice, but we've already performed that.
Numb again? No. So he can get it right.
But there's a newer song they've been working on. It's Powerless, and that's coming together. And it's amazing. You guys you're in for a treat.
Okay, so this one is left up to interpretation. Oscar, James, Kris, Sunshine, Taco. I wanted to thank everybody for coming out today. This has been a really, really cool episode. Bush Jumping Productions. It's all in the show notes. Bush Jumping Productions.
Is Bush Jumping is our artist collective. Bush Jumping is our artist collective. Bush Jumping is our music side. And at least it's same energy, same amazing things you coming together.
You guys make me want to like unretire and get back into music, y'all.
I will say Mark was one of the people in my life, not just artists that we were inspired by that were untouchable. Mark was one of the prime examples of artists that I was inspired by because of his similar multi-genre, multidisciplinary drive. And that's a sign of, honestly, awakening.
Well, usually I would deflect that comment, but I am working on receiving. So message received. Y'all, thank you for coming out to the Golden Mike podcast. Last thing I just want to say is remember, revolt in love. Fuck, I fucked it up. Hold on, I forgot my own line, guys.
Who's running the show?
One director.
Yeah. Remember, revolt in love, in light, in shadows, in joy. Take it away, Bush Jumping Productions. Let's do it.
So as Oscar mentioned, we cover all aspects, and in words, it's honestly representing the entire human story. There's highs, there's lows. As Mark knows, there's joy and there's suffering. But if you're able to make it through, then you're able to see a lot of beauty in life as well. And while we've talked and written so much authentically about suffering, this song shows what comes out the other side when you have truly time-stopping moments in life. It's called Powerless.
Lifetime of experiences where time stands still. Yes, time it slows to a crawl, and it leaves you breathless. Yes, it leaves you breathless, and I'm powerless. Get you if I tried. Oh darling, I just want to be by your side. And the clouds, they dance to reveal like the seas, how they part to reveal a beauty I have never known. And I'm left here breathless, and you were left there breathless, and I'm powerless. Wouldn't forget you if I tried. Oh darling, I just want to be by your side. Darling, I won't ever forget you. I won't ever forget you. Way
job, boys. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
It's time to go home. Good night. I hope you enjoyed the Golden Mike podcast. There's more good stuff coming your way. But until the next episode, let's stay in touch, yes? Find us on Instagram as TheJoyRev, or communicate with like-minded revolutionaries in our Facebook group. Search The Joy Revolution Underground. And of course, don't forget to check out the classes, articles, blogs, and some serious fun at joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Now, until then, what will you do to change history for the better? Let's go out and play, shall we? Press start to begin.